My name is Hudson Kingston, and I am legal director at a nonprofit called CURE, which stands for Cure at this point. We work a lot on rural environmental issues, and specifically, we do a lot of work in energy and clean energy stuff and rural democracy. So the interesting thing about cleaning up your own home heating is it's good for you and it's good for the planet. And so it's the sort of win-win that I personally am very fond of. I am not a scientist, but I do have a heat pump. So that's my qualification at this point. Folks who are new to Ely Climate Group may be surprised to hear that we are in a climate emergency. And this is one of the slides that Barb helped me out with. The U.S. is on track. I wish that banner would go away. That the U.S. is on track to produce more oil and gas in 2023 than ever before. So on the left, the U.S. field production of crude oil, average barrels today has gone up from about 5 million in 2011 to well over 10 million last year. And gas, million cubic feet per month has gone from under 2 million to above 3 million. So we're certainly doing gangbusters on producing oil and gas, which, as we know here in northern Minnesota, is relevant to our discussion today because oil is turned into fuel oil to heat your home, or gas is processed into propane fuel, which is obviously a fossil fuel. Also, in addition to our great ability to produce fossil fuels, 2023 has been gangbusters for average temperature. We're now at 1.48 C above pre-industrial. And this is where 2023 was hotter or colder compared with the baseline, which is the 1990s through 2020. And we are definitely in the hotter zone here in northern Minnesota, not as bad as northern Canada, obviously, and some other places, but we've had a pretty warm go of it. And I think this winter is a good example of that, of a combination El Nino and climate change winter, which is making it easier for me to heat my house. But other than that, is not necessarily good for our snow economy or our way of life based on a strong winter that we have up here in Ely. And heat pumps are, as people may already know, electric way to heat your home that is more efficient than what electric heat has been in the past. And I found this visualization in The Guardian. We do have at least one person attending on Zoom from the UK, so we obviously have to use The Guardian as our main source, which is that only 1% of British homes have a heat pump, but in the next 25 years, they're going to bump that up to 80% or more. And similarly, we're going to have to do that in the United States as well, like especially when transitioning from fuel oil or gas. It's just necessary for climate change, and it's also a pretty great way to make people's homes more comfortable and do so more cheaply. But this is just to explain how a heat pump works, basically with a visualization. They're very counterintuitive for most people in that there's this big box outside your house, and they use the heat from outdoors to heat the inside of your home, even in cold weather. So to understand how that works on a cold day, say it's 4 degrees centigrade, which is certainly below, well, it's above freezing. It's warmer than it is here, but it's still cool. And what is going on inside of that box, which looks somewhat like an air conditioning unit outside your house? The part that is doing the hard work absorbing the heat from the air is called the evaporator. And that is a bunch of pipes in that box that contain cold liquid, which is a refrigerant at about -4 degrees Celsius, so below freezing. The fan blows air onto the pipes, and the heat that's coming off of the well, let's just read what it's saying. The combination of pressure and temperature in the evaporator means that the refrigerant cannot continue to be a liquid and it becomes a gas. It is taking the heat from the air and it is expanding in that pipe. So as the function that's happening outside of your house is that the refrigerant is expanding, it's taking up more space. It's also cooling the air outside. So when someone calls a heat pump a refrigerator, but in reverse, you can think of it as a refrigerator where the inside of the fridge is actually the outside of your house. You're cooling the outdoor air and you're bringing the heat from that process into your house, as opposed to what your refrigerator does, which is cools inside the fridge and pushes the heat outside of the fridge.
Wow.
It's weird. It's very weird and somewhat counterintuitive. So then the refrigerant has absorbed the heat. It is now a gas. It has expanded quite a lot. And by compressing it down, using electricity and a compressor, similar to what you have on your fridge, the refrigerant becomes quite a lot hotter. So it cycles through some tubes and into your house, and it is compressed, creating heat, in this case going from 1 degree Celsius to 90 degrees Celsius, which is nearly boiling. And then the high pressure gas is hot enough to power central heating, and that happens in the condenser. So in the case of this example, the refrigerant is at 90 degrees Celsius. It is used to heat water up to a certain amount to propel a radiator system, which that doesn't have to be how your heat pump works. Mine doesn't heat water, it heats air, but it's the same principle, which is that a very hot refrigerant is now coming into the house and heating up the air inside your house. And then this is pretty much the same as how a fridge works in reverse, as I said. And then the refrigerant cycles right back to where it came from. So on the way out of the house, it depressurizes in an expansion valve, dropping the temperature from 53 down to -4 again. And the heat pump uses pressure to change the refrigerant from liquid to a gas and back again. So transferring heat from outside the house to inside your house in a vapor compression cycle. So a heat pump is using electricity to move heat. It's not making any heat. It's just taking stuff from outside, cooling the outdoors ever so slightly and making your house much warmer as a result. And that is the end of that. These humble boxes could be what Britain needs to help the country hit net zero goals and save customers from rocketing gas prices. It's a pretty good piece of propaganda. I really like what the Guardian did here. Okay, and then the article continues. I'd be happy to share that with anybody, but changing the topic yet again with my dual screens, I am now going to go to my main slides, heat pumps, the cozy climate solution. Heat pumps are very important to addressing climate change. The International Energy Agency has said that in order to hit only 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, which is where we are almost at as of last year, we need a boatload of new heat pumps by 2030. Basically, we have to stop installing anything that's not a heat pump by 2030. But the faster we do that, the better. In 2021, according to IEA, 10% of space heating needs were met with heat pumps. But by 2030, heat pumps could mix out the at least 500 million tons of pollution, which is equivalent to every car in Europe today. In order to do this, IEA has said that government support for installing these things is absolutely essential, and 30 countries, including our own, have supports that encourage people to get these things installed. And as we said, it happens at the government level, but it also happens from your utility. And it's actually also, there's going to be another incentive coming from the state of Minnesota, which I will get to at one of the last slides in this presentation. So we're working on it. Not everything is up and running yet, but we are incentivizing the crud out of it. Heat pumps are not only good at making your house more hot or cold. They also serve as air conditioners when you need one of those, because they can work the other way around. They're also extremely efficient. So not only are they using electricity to heat your home, but they are doing it without using very much juice, compared to our house, which has normal electric heaters. For every 100 kilowatt hours of energy we put in, we get about 95 kilowatt hours of heat. So it's like 95% efficient. By contrast, when you put in 100 kilowatt hours into a heat pump, you can get out 270 units of heat, kilowatt hours worth of heat, because like I said a little bit ago, you're not making heat. You're not actually using electricity to boil water or to heat air. You're just taking heat from somewhere else, and that produces a huge efficiency. Ground source heat pumps, which are taking heat not from the outside air, but from the dirt or even water in front of your house, would be a water source heat pump, are even more efficient than that, because they're drawing from a consistent heat, because the ground at a certain depth never really gets as cold as the outdoor air does. But by contrast, green hydrogen, which we've talked about in this group, if it was used to heat your home, would get about 46 kilowatt hours of energy for every 100 kilowatt hours put in. So you're losing more than half of the energy by using the electricity to create a gas, then moving the gas to where it will be used, and then burning the gas. A lot is lost in each of those steps. Whereas heat pumps basically are these little miracle devices that produce more heat than the juice you put into them.
Is there any thought that hydrogen would ever be used to heat a residential home?
So it's happened. It's been studied in depth in the United Kingdom, and that's why I'm also excited Max is here. He might know more about it than any of us. The UK has looked very seriously into heating homes with hydrogen, and they've had to admit that it's a terrible idea. They had 2 demonstration cities where they were going to do it. People in those cities were rebelled, but also they couldn't even secure the hydrogen for the demonstration projects. So they've had a lot of setbacks in trying to do that. Max, did you want to say anything? I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, you're quite right there. That's exactly how it's been. A lot of people have rebelled about it. I don't know much about it myself. That's why I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
I want to learn.
Well, and you find that if you do research on this online, a lot of the stuff comes from the UK. So thank you to the United Kingdom for working through these issues for us, and doing some pretty in-depth reports. My last bullet here is heating can be a huge cost to rural and low-income people. I mean, it can take a huge chunk out of your income in rural places, we all know. So along with weatherization, changing to more efficient heating can really allow people to save money while living cozier lives and living in just a much more pleasant house or workplace or what have you. Efficiency isn't just a matter of dollars and cents, it's a matter of helping people live better lives. So the main part of my expertise in this sense is that we got a heat pump, me and Maggie, earlier this year. These are the 3 heads that bring the heat or cold into our house, all on the same side of our house. And you can see that it was retrofitted into a fairly old home with nice wood paneling up here. Took these photos this afternoon, and the first one on the left is in our kitchen. The one in the middle is in our bedroom, and the one on the far right with Kat is in a hallway and is in between those 2 things. So there's a 3-ton cold climate heat pump sitting outside of our kitchen, and it serves heat or cold to these 3 different units that have been put all on the same side of our house. So
now, is that air, forced air?
it's not forced air.
Or is it hot water?
It's neither nor. It
Okay.
is, so those heads.
The magic liquid from the compressor is coming into each of those.
Yes.
In a small pipe.
So the magic liquid that is either hot or cold, depending on what you told it to do, will come in And then a fan will move the air that's already in the room around, but either hotter or colder than it was. So it's not bringing any air from outdoors at all. It's just
So the
bringing in
fan
heat.
is connected to that piece of equipment.
Yes, yes.
So that piece is really just a heat exchanger, something with fins and a fan, right? I assume.
This
the-
piece is, yeah, this piece is, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And it has a sensor to determine what the temperature is, so it'll turn itself on and off based on whether it's achieved its goal for the day.
Okay.
And it's a pretty whiz bang little feature. And I mean, it isn't forced air, so it's not designed to heat our entire house. It just heats the part of the house that we are in most of the time. And our house is very well insulated, so it's been doing a great job of heating the whole house, even though that's not what it's for.
Do you want a draft from the fan?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a draft, like, yes, it moves air,
Mhm.
so you do feel that circulation, but it's not so forceful that it's like an annoying draft or anything, and they are very high up, so it's moves, yeah, so I wouldn't say you like feel it blowing on you while you're trying to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
This then really is something that supplements the main energy that you're using to heat your house, whether it be fuel oil or propane or whatever.
currently that is,
It's not gonna heat the average house without having, I don't know, 10 of them or 50.
well, no, you don't have to install 10 of them. What I would say is, especially for those of us who already have a furnace, right? You can do what we did, which is we just added this as a secondary heater. And so far this year, and I admit that this year has been much warmer than the last two, we have not turned on our furnace as of yet, and I'm not really planning on it this year.
What's the life of one of these?
Ours is, I am confident ours is going to last 15 years. But that's based on how long they were happy to warranty. I think that's an average, at least 15 years, and they are becoming, the technology is getting better and better. So at the end, I will admit that ours goes down to negative 18 degrees outside air temperature. So they're going to get better, and at some point, we may want to replace it just to get a system that goes down to negative 25. You know what I mean?
And what is the cost of one of these?
You're jumping to all the great questions. This one cost us $13,000. We
How
have
much?
13.
How many thousand?
13.
Thousand?
Yes. And the other quote we got was $10,000 for a similar unit.
That blows me away.
Yeah.
So if you already have electric heat.
Yeah.
In a furnace. You can't plug this into your existing system. The outside feature and the inside feature are separate. Set of equipment that allows you to just not turn on the furnace, but this furnace system, heated floors, all that cannot be plugged into this.
You have radiators
In
or
some-
forced air?
We don't have forced air.
Okay.
We have heat in the floors, and in our lower bathrooms, we have some heaters on the floor.
Yeah, so there are heat pumps that can boil water and heat water to go into your furnace system, so it could be plugged in. We didn't go for something that complicated because they're still newer technology, but you can use outside air to heat water to go into your existing system.
Okay, thank you.
And there are systems, heat pump systems, that could heat the air in a central forced air system.
Yes,
Okay, so you would use your furnace
move
to
the air.
distribute the air around the house.
Yeah.
But you would use the heat pump to heat the air instead of a flame
yeah.
from the
And-
propane or whatever.
And my brother recently upgraded his furnace to exactly what you're talking about. If you have forced air, you can have a heat pump for all the way down to the absolute coldest temperature, and then it uses resistance heat, so still electricity just to heat the air for
Supplemented.
those couple days a year that you need it. So there can be this one central, it's exactly like a propane-based forced air furnace, but it uses this much more efficient technology, and it's a one-for-one replacement if you want to rip out your old system.
Right, you still use all your same heat distribution.
Yeah.
Of the hot air
Yeah.
around your house.
Yeah, so you can definitely hook these into either a hot water system or a forced air system if you want to. We went with something that is a new system in addition to the ones we already have. But that was just a choice I made because that's what I felt like doing.
Are there, either, I don't know, an electrician or a plumber or both, local, contractors that will install, the system?
So for the mini split system, which is what it's called here, where it's not a forced air system, but it's those things on the wall. Yes, there are many businesses who can do that. For a forced air system, yes, I think that would be pretty easy to do. For the thing that you and I might want to do eventually, which is to have our radiator system run off a heat pump, that's still pretty new technology. So you're talking about having someone come up from Two Harbors or something like that, not necessarily a very local business, but still someone in northern Minnesota, you know. You'd have to scout them out and talk to someone. But I did find someone who's capable of doing that. They just didn't return my phone calls when I called them. Because
Probably busy.
plumbers are busy, you know what I mean? Especially,
No.
yeah,
Hudson,
people have to be able to do both. Yeah, yeah.
what's the efficiency loss with the colder temperatures? Does the efficiency change a lot?
Yes. So it goes down, like it is happiest at like 10 degrees Fahrenheit, probably. And then by -5, it's still more efficient than our electric heat by a lot, but it has like halved its efficiency at that point. And then, like I said, at -18, it'll turn itself off.
Are there
Uh.
consequences can it be just hurt? Let's say we're at -40 for 3
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah.
Are there any consequences to that?
I did hear from the installers that if it was weeks and weeks, it can fill up with snow. So like you don't want it to necessarily, you don't want the fan itself to freeze, but that's why they warranty their work and they
But the
don't expect
temperature
that.
itself isn't an issue.
No, it's definitely not gonna mess.
I did a little bit of just looking on the internet and apparently this building up with snow. If you're gonna use it all winter long, it's important not to have everything right on the ground. You gotta leave room.
Yep.
We're talking
Yeah.
large amounts of.
And ours, I didn't bring a photo from our house, but ours is like 1.5 feet off the ground on a pad, and then it has these little legs. So I will probably at some point go out and shovel around it, but I mean, I haven't had to do
But
that
it's
yet.
basically
obviously.
making snow. Snow. and ice.
It's it's producing cool air, but that cool air just like escapes from the unit into our garden.
So
It
having
doesn't
stuff build up
condensate.
around it is not gonna be.
No, that's just gonna be if it drifts up on it because it's
Hudson, Mike has his hand up.
Mike, please go.
Hi Hudson, I just got on. I was at another thing, but I have heat pumps for my house for the last 3 years. And last year, for the first time, I had one of them that iced up after the late winter, early spring snows, and I didn't shovel it out. And it iced up so much that it pushed the fan blades against the cowling. And I had to stop it because it was ding, 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 ding. And so that is one of the things that I learned, was that it is probably smart to keep them shoveled out and brushed away carefully so you don't bend up the fins, so that they don't end up getting a big iceberg that builds up inside the unit.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good to know. I will do that. I have a greenhouse I need to shovel off too. So 2 things to shovel in addition to my driveway.
Just to.
Otherwise, they work awesome. And I will tell people on this call that if you've got a good envelope on your home, you can do a really good job of heating your house. And we have never had to use anything other than the heat pumps for the last 3 winters.
Awesome.
Just to clarify on this, the ice and snow, any of the ice and snow that Hudson or Mike are talking about is ice and snow coming down naturally around. It is not being created by the heat pump.
I
Yeah.
didn't realize that.
Okay,
Yeah,
there's no condensation,
Okay,
there's nothing like that. It
Okay.
is not being created in the heat pump.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's coming from.
Yeah. And ours is on the breezy side of the house, so I will be shoveling it out every winter,
No,
but that's
sure.
just, it's exercise. I like having.
Would it make
exercise.
sense to locate the, what do you call the part that's, the part that's outside?
Mike, what do you call the part? that's-
Compressor,
Yeah.
Right.
Com-
Okay,
compressor, I think.
put the compressor on the warm sunny side of my house.
Yeah,
Or
or
on the cold, where it never sees the sun north side of the house.
I would, what we did was we put it as close to where the biggest head we want,
The
The-
head being
being the thing that's shooting the heat down.
inside.
The efficiency is the longer those pipes are, the more efficiency you lose. So you
Okay.
want it to be as close to that as possible. So we actually put it on a side of the house that's inconvenient for snow drifts, but convenient for its operation on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so a lot of things to consider.
There's a few things that,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, ultimately, people might like build a little screen, put like a snow fence in front of it, because I mean, then you don't have nearly as much of a concern.
Sheltering, you can shelter them.
Yeah,
Unit.
yeah, it just needs to have air going in and out.
Well, it's good. I thought it was making its own moisture and it's not. So it's.
Yeah.
That's just because it's so much colder.
Well,
The exhaust coming out of there is.
we get snow and ice here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And builds
It
up
does.
wherever it is.
Yeah.
Right, leave your
Yeah.
driveway and buy your heat pump.
So you could build like a roof over the top of it then, right?
yeah, just a little
Just
structure around it, yeah.
help.
Yep. Okay, these are great questions and statements, and I have some slides that slightly illustrate what Mike has also had his experience for the last 3 years, but what I'm calling Hudson's experiment. This is my actual energy usage over the last 3 years and last 3 winters. This is, and we'll get into the nitty gritty, but this is 2021-22 winter. This is last winter, 23-24, and this is our winter thus far. And the brown lines, if you can see those, are almost entirely our heating system, because this is my Minnesota Power dual fuel system, where brown is the electricity I'm getting a bit cheaper. So as you can see in that first winter, incredibly high energy usage. Last winter, cut it down a bit. And then this winter, which is warmer, I'll concede I can't control for temperature in my experiment. And I'm not a scientist, but I am very pig-headed. We've had considerably less electrical usage. So to get into details on that first winter, this is us using electric heat all winter long. At its peak in early January, in 1 week, we used close to 900 kilowatt hours of electricity. And that is just with our baseboard heaters working at their like 95% efficiency to boil water. And this winter, we just let it go and see what it would do. And I would say, and I have a slide about this later, these bills were like under Minnesota Power were like $600 a month or so. So I mean, I was definitely learned my lesson that year, and came back next year thinking, I know what I'll do. I'll use my backup heat, which is my wood system. We have some fuel oil. I basically kept the electric furnace on, but you can see on this week of January 29th, I did a very good job of burning wood, because it was both the coldest time of that entire period, and I used absolutely no electricity for heating my house. So I was burning wood like it was my job. And yet we still had a week where the peak for heating was close to 400 kilowatt hours of electricity. And I mean, I've had bills at a house that we had down in St. Paul where the entire month was like 250 kilowatt hours. So this was in 1 week for just heating. I'm using 400 or so kilowatt hours of electricity using my normal electric heating. And then you fast forward to this year. Let me just, I'll definitely be able to go back to these slides. This year is without our electric heat furnace turned on, but just running this new heat pump system we have. And we did have 1 week that's already been about 200 kilowatt hours for heating, but I'll take that over nearly 900. We've cut our usage down by like 5 times by switching from normal electric heat, which again, normal electric heat climate wise and pollution wise is way better than me burning fuel oil. But
Or burning wood.
or the wood also has a carbon cost, and it does have localized
Very
pollution.
large, as a matter of.
Yeah, so this has sort of been a win-win in terms of saving me a lot of electrical usage and also keeping me from having to get up in the morning and get my wood fire going. And this is also a day-by-day breakout of this winter again, and you can see that we're just not using that much electricity. The yellow lines is how much we're using for, turning on our lights or running our computers or anything like that, like our normal human usage. And then the electric that is brown is just the heat pumps. I think Mike, were you trying to say something and I cut you off, or was it Doug?
There are a couple of things I'm thinking of. Just curious, do you know how much you pay per kilowatt hour with Minnesota Power?
So in those yellow lines, I think it's about 12 cents. And for the brown lines, it's closer to like 6 cents.
Wow. Okay. So electricity is still pretty cheap if you're hooked up to the grid. It's kind of hard to compete for a lot of people. The other thing I wanted to mention is those of you who are with CCL, I look at their emails and I haven't done their Zooms or anything because I have limited Zoom capability and limited system here. So I'm going to just repeat what I said at some earlier meetings, whereas if the state with their rebates or CCL or all the people who are concerned about energy use want more people to adopt this, it has to be for the low-income people. It has to be an upfront rebate to get either the heater or more electric panels or battery. So a lot of people won't even consider this because they don't benefit because they're low income.
I have a slide about this. Don't worry, Doug.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Okay.
We're gonna get there, and your point is well made.
Okay.
So speeding to my my other slides, just one more last slide on climate change. Similar to other things that run on electricity, like this dirty electric car of mine, the electrical grid is getting greener over time. So Barb has a whole lot of numbers in her head about how much carbon per kilowatt hour we're spending. But the great thing about using electrical heat in general, especially efficient electrical heat, is that as the grid gets cleaner, your electrical heat is also getting cleaner, and it's coming more and more from renewable resources and clean resources. Like your fridge, it may break down, it may need a new compressor, but you don't have to go and get it filled up regularly with the propane truck or the fuel oil truck or what have you. So it's more of an issue of repairing it when it breaks, but otherwise it just sort of runs in the background, and it's not as much of a maintenance or even upkeep and cleaning things out system. I should be cleaning the air filters on those heads, but so far it hasn't been a problem. And just to talk about savings again, our monthly bills which are coming from electric heating to electric heating with a heat pump, have dropped by as much as $500 a month. And I mean, obviously not everyone here is a Minnesota Power customer, so maybe you have a different rate structure. I think it's more interesting to see the change in electrical usage because that's more of a apples to apples comparison. But we can save, and we will save this winter, several $1,000s, it seems like. And then even when we were maxing out our backup last winter, when we were trying to just run our electrical system a lot less, we were still paying through the nose for electricity and creating a whole lot more pollution, either burning wood or fuel oil. Also on that brown usage, we have been able to also put in our water heater, which is also a heat pump inside the house, that heats all of the water for our house. And so we're able to get that preferential lower electrical rate for heating water in our house too. We've had that longer than we've had the actual house heating system. So it's just sort of a relief. We'll never have to probably pay for another oil delivery, even though we do have a 1/3 full oil tank still sitting there. We don't have to burn wood to keep ourselves from freezing. We just don't really think about using it, and we won't really have to worry too much until it's close to -18 degrees, or I have to go and shovel. Which, you know, I'll still do that, because especially with Mike's example, I am definitely going to shovel around my heat pump. Don't worry, Mike. And to the money issue, because we talked about how much it costs. So right now, and to Doug's issue, right now there are tax credits through the federal IRA for $2,000 to do a heat pump. You can do it every year. You could get $2,000 off your taxes if you just kept installing heat pumps like a crazy person. But there's also a means connected rebate system where upfront, if you are low income as defined by your community and what people are making in your community, you can get up to $8,000 off the upfront cost. And that's just from the federal incentives. From your utilities, Minnesota Power, for example, has rebates for heat pumps that go between $400 and $1,000. Sometimes they're even higher if you do something like a ground source heat pump, or something fancier like that, which have higher upfront costs, but are far more efficient. And Lake Country Power has I looked at them and they were pretty much the same as Minnesota Power. For this type of heat pump, you get this type of rebate.
Yeah. And Courtney, you said, look, right now, are we to anticipate this is gonna change suddenly, or
Well,
if I wait 2 years, am I gonna miss the boat, or?
the incentives are getting better. So the state of Minnesota has passed, but it's not scaled up yet, a $4,000 rebate that you could also get for a heat pump. So they're only getting better. The rebate system based on your income is, my understanding is that that's money that passes through to the states. So you may have to wait on the state of Minnesota to stand up their system for doing so.
But in that regard, there's no rush. It's not like.
It's not a rush right now.
Motor's gonna.
No,
Fail ends
and
on Friday.
I think the state ones, they don't have unlimited funds. So like there might be a use it or lose it thing for the $4,000 state rebate when it comes, but the federal ones are unlimited.
Okay.
So we could just install heat pumps until we're dead, as long as this legislation still exists, and there's no pool of money. The money cap is unlimited because it's, at least the tax refunds are unlimited tax refunds. So this is going to continue on in the years to come. And like I said, the incentives are pretty good right now, and they will get better. So as I say at the bottom, based on your income and like where you're at in terms of all of the incentives, because these all stack, you could get up to $15,000 off of your heat pump, right? So if you're buying a heat pump that's going to cost you $20,000 and you get $15,000 off of it, that's a pretty good deal. Also, it's going to save you a huge amount of money as soon as it's installed. I mean, that's over time, obviously, but that's what all these incentives are for. And it goes back to my first slide. Without these incentives, as Doug is saying, it's just like the upfront cost is high. And we aren't going to get where we need to go in terms of climate change without these incentives. So thankfully, the federal ones are pretty solid. The Lake Country Power and Minnesota Power ones are solid and in existence now. And that's a rebate. As soon as you get it installed, you can apply for your rebate. So you don't really have to wait. You have to wait for them to do the paperwork, but it's not like you have to wait for the next year's taxes. And then Minnesota is also standing up an additional incentive to do it. And like us, you know, you don't need to rip out your existing system. So we just added, I like to joke, nobody really laughs, but I like to joke that my last 3 generations of my family each had their own furnace, because my grandparents put in the oil and fireplace system. my mom put in the whiz bang electrical radiator system, and here we are putting in a heat pump. And so, yeah, there's a lot of gizmos and gadgets heating our house, but the last one, the most recent one, seems to be doing it a lot easier, for a lot less financial outlay. And we didn't get, because of our household income, we didn't get the huge rebate for being low income, but what I'm excited about is, people who are on a fixed income, right, should be able to benefit from this, like people who potentially, have a lower income because they're retired or whatever. I believe, but I have not fully verified, would be like the ideal people to be outfitting their houses with these new whiz-bang technologies, because it's about what your net income is right now, and it it's compared against the regional income of people. So I think it'd be great to see places like Silver Bay, which have a really large proportion of older folks. It'd be great for them to all get to take advantage of this, and it'd just be great to get that information out to those communities too.
Yeah.
Hudson,
Yeah,
these rebates and credits, they apply only to the hardware or to the installation cost as well?
the whole cost, as far as I know. Yeah, installation too. This is why I wanted to get a salesman here, because these guys are really good at explaining this stuff. We definitely need to get an HVAC sales guy here on the next time we talk about heat pumps.
No, I can see that's a hefty federal rebate, and I can imagine a lot of grid-tied people could benefit from it and would be happy to do that. In my particular case, though, I'm not grid-tied, so the only way I could do something like this is to increase my solar panel and battery power.
Yeah.
And the rebates for that are probably either non-existent or much less. But that's what I would need to do. But most people are grid tied, so I think a lot of people will benefit and take advantage of that, as
Yeah.
long as they know about it.
We need to make you an iron air battery, Doug. Add it to our list of to-dos.
I think if you're off, burn wood.
That's if you
You're
live in the
already
woods.
too good, Doug.
Yeah, yeah.
I do burn wood, yeah, and I think, wood does have a carbon cost, but it regrows, so,
It's not a fossil fuel, we know that.
yeah.
So I have one more lame slide where people can ask testimony or ask questions, give their testimonials. If anyone hates being cozy and doesn't want to be cozy, now is your time to volunteer that information. I know that other people here have heat pumps. I don't know if everybody wants to go around and talk about how they heat their homes, but we certainly have 10 minutes for that if we want to do. I don't know. We had a great question and answer session in the middle there. Go ahead, Jeff.
Question for you.
Yeah.
These split systems that you've got, they're kind of around, they're happening. The hot air force systems are coming on. I know that the municipal center in Babbitt is heated by ground source heat pumps.
Yeah.
My house, I heat by electric hot water. I'm very interested in heat pumps, but know of many residential places around here that are heating by ground source.
Geothermal.
Geothermal.
Pete Baragas, I believe.
So yeah,
Cities have that.
so Mike has an answer. I could talk, but Mike, go for it.
So there was a building that was built for a chiropractor in just south of Knife River. And it was a big log home type building, but they put geothermal in. This would have been, goodness, probably 25 years ago. And I know that it worked beautifully for them. I don't know what sort of issues they may have had in terms of maintenance, but I don't think that there were very many. And I also know that that my brother-in-law that worked as a probation officer over in Grand Rapids, he was eager to share the information about one of their facilities that they had in Grand Rapids, where they put a number of wells in and they did geothermal heating and cooling. And he said it was an extremely efficient, very well-liked system that worked for them. So the geothermal is, I know that it's not been done very much up here, but I know that for the people that have done it, I think they've had pretty happy outcomes.
A
Yeah.
really good example of the ground geothermal is the Finland Community Center. They have a display set up. If people ever get into Finland, they're a good one to look at.
Yeah, and for our system, I just know that we have so much rock in the ground that we have trouble getting even a septic system put in, so I didn't even consider it. You know, we would have had to use so much dynamite in our yard to even think about it, that I was willing to let the good be the good enough. as
All
opposed-
Sioux Shirking have in ground
Yeah, oh, that's awesome.
on their house.
Yeah,
I assume you're not allowed to use the lake.
I also
Right.
strongly believe that it would be illegal to use the lake.
Okay.
Yeah. You could potentially go straight down and try to use the water that's in, you know, the groundwater. But that I have heard, although the heat pump itself is efficient, you're pumping water in an incredible distance. So you lose a lot of electricity on the pumps.
And let's keep that water close.
Yeah,
My well is 18 feet deep into spring water.
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Spring Ridge Road going into Birch Lake.
Yeah.
So you have really good consistent all the time same temperature at 18 feet.
yeah. Yeah, that could be a pretty good system.
It could be.
Yeah.
Miners Lake on one.
Oh, right.
There's things not a lake.
Right, right. The DNR might not mind.
And as we know from the recreation part, connecting property owners own to the center of it.
Yeah, that would be a really
They own
fun
the mine pit,
experiment.
side
Yeah,
of the mine pit, so.
yeah. Beth?
Yeah, I'm just curious, wrong season, but how well do these air condition your house? Everybody knows the summers are getting warmer, so well do these work as air conditioners?
Yeah, well, we didn't have an air conditioner before, so I don't have something to compare against, but it works really well and it uses a lot less electricity than an air conditioner. So it's just sort of a free air conditioner to go with your potentially kind of expensive heater. And yeah, this last summer we had it and we used it a few nights. And once I figured out how it works, because I had not seen this presentation and I was like, oh, it's definitely bringing in air from the outside. So I just turned the fan on one night thinking it was going to cool off. I was like, nope, that's not how it works. But yeah, it's able to go down very cold, like uncomfortably cold if you leave it going, which I did test when there was a mosquito and I just didn't want the mosquito to bite me. So I dried him out, stopped him that way.
Well, quick recommendation, a certain time in, the desert Southwest, people are swapping out slowly there, just, everyone's got an outside air conditioner unit.
Swamp coolers?
Well, this is too little too humid for soft clothes, believe it or not.
Okay.
But the idea was basically all you had to do to get an air exchanger or a heat exchanger system is get a different outside compressor for your, instead of that, it's the same, the box looks exactly the same, actually. The compressor for your air conditioner, it sits outside the building. That turns into so people are putting in, just like we're changing out our heaters to be this system.
Yeah.
People are doing the same thing with air conditioning.
Oh, and that's a great question about when it reaches its end of life too. So yeah, you can just replace the outdoor unit and keep the indoor units the same. Save some money.
I was told this one unit, you could actually replace that and all you do is like change your thermostat and work with all the other heaters, but there's
Yeah.
still a gas furnace in place.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I also wanted to ask, you said there's a 3-ton unit outside, like, what, is it like literally?
That's what they call
That's
it.
how they're rated.
Yeah, that's their
It
rate.
has nothing to do with how much they
So
weigh.
it doesn't weigh 3 tons.
No,
No,
no, it just sounds impressive
So that's
calling
like
it
a
a 3
rough
ton.
measure of like air compression or something? Or
Do you know?
It's tons per hour, I think, of ice.
Okay.
It goes way back.
well,
to the
way
first-
back when.
Yeah,
you know,
way
but
back.
Oh, really? So it's a rating that would.
It's,
okay.
Yeah.
it's another way of defining the thermal capacity.
Okay.
So it helps you compare it against a different furnace that runs on something totally different. Yeah, it's
Pretty impressive.
it's-
It's 3 tons.
it's big, but it's not, it certainly didn't weigh 3 tons when they put it next to our house. We did have a chat about whether it's a noisy unit, and our house is very well insulated with good windows. But it is not noisy at all, and even when I am standing outside and it's running, I can hear the fan spinning, but it's very, very acceptable. There's no clicking, there's no annoying repetitive noise. Inside the house, I can't hear it at all. So it's pretty
They run pretty much been continuously.
it's more, so yeah, the newer versions, they're more efficient if they can run continuously, but like run less strong.
Mhm.
That so ours pretty much is running, it doesn't turn itself on and off very much. Yeah. And I just got an email. That was that sound. I did tell Barb I was going to do a full scan of everybody. Who else has any questions or thoughts?
Yeah, I've just got one, Hudson. It's very interesting hearing all your experiences with the products, but it could really be considered that this is all experimental almost at the moment. It seems like you people who are jumping in and trying out the units. Do you think there's anyone in authority collating the data on? I mean, the efforts you've gone to produce the graphs, sharing the efficiency is marvelous. But surely, if these things are going to expand and the costs are going to come down, somewhere surely somebody's keeping an eye on the productivity of them or the efficiency of them. Is there anything being done about that, do you think, with authorities? Are they collating information on how folks like yourselves are managing the products?
Yeah, there was an article again from The Guardian from like a day or two ago saying that people who live in Victorian homes in the UK are 83% happy with their heat pumps. But yes, no, there are many studies about the overall efficiency. I would defer to Mike on real numbers because I just wanted to give the anecdotal guy who lives in Ely version of this presentation. Mike, I'm calling you in. Tag.
Thank you. I was going to say that I put 2 links in the chat. One of them is an organization that's the Minnesota Air Source Heat Pump Collaborative. And I think they're an excellent source of information for people that want more answers. And another one is I put a link in the chat to an article that was written about our specific experience with our home and our air source heat pumps that was written by Stephanie Hemphill last year. In answer to your question about how much, I know that the question was how much power do they use? So we have 2 that heat our 2,200 square foot home. And we have a 1965 home that we did a deep energy remodel on in 2020 and essentially put an extra envelope all the way around the house to make it very energy efficient, new windows and doors, and then ripped out the old off-peak furnace that we had, off-peak electric, and put in 1 heat pump on one end and 1 heat pump on the other end. And the heat pumps combined, when they're running, pull 2.7 kilowatts of electricity when they're working on full. So it was interesting. I came across a graphic today that showed the average number of kilowatt hours, megawatt hours that people in the United States use, and that's when they're using electricity to power their lives, but doesn't count the fossil fuels that they use to heat and cool their homes. And right now, we use half as much of that to run our 100% completely electric home. So it's a good thing. And I know I heard the comment that this was kind of experimental, and I don't think it's experimental anymore. I think this is well accepted technology that is going to continue to improve, but it's been proven to work. It's not maybe it'll work. It is for sure going to work. But I will also encourage people to have a home energy audit done first, because you've got to have a good envelope on your home to get good benefits with these. Thanks for letting me chime in.
Yeah. And Pam has a chat saying, anyone know of someone off-grid using heat pumps? I think that Doug was making the same point, and I think Mike's point is the main point. I believe you could do it off-grid. You would have to insulate the bejesus out of your house first, and then get a heat pump system that works for that kind of a house. So like you would really want to not have to use it full blast all the time to deal with a drafty house. And I mean, the reason we're having great success with it is because my mom got the house fully insulated couple decades ago. And that pays dividends. Like, weatherization is perhaps not always the sexiest topic, but it's also an important part of this equation in decarbonizing buildings.
Now, as the grid gets cleaner and cleaner, let's say 10 years from now, maybe the grid will be close to 100% clean. Then moving to a heat pump isn't going to save carbon, but maybe it is going to save dollars.
Yeah, and I would also say, just comparing us from 2 winters ago to this winter, it's like 3 houses can be comfortably warm for the same electricity as one house when you switch this technology. It's just so many more people can have access to a comfortable place to live if we all live more efficiently, I guess, is the way I look at it.
Go ahead, am I interrupting?
Becky?
I was just gonna say, the one problem that this doesn't solve is that we lose electricity every once in a while.
Yeah,
So we have, we've got an emergency backup system.
I'm a strong proponent of having a backup. Yeah, I mean, we still burn wood as much, but it's now more of a fun thing to do and less of a necessity to stay alive.
I have a quick comment for Doug. You would not even consider taking your off-grid system and using resistant heat, would you?
Resistant heat, actually, I occasionally use a little bit of resistant heat, but it's a tiny percentage of what heats my house. The main consideration for an off-grid person is they generally learn to use a lot less electricity, period. So even if I mean, if my system could run a very small heat pump, that's all it could run right now. If I wanted a heat pump like you're talking about, I would have to do a large upgrade on my off-grid system, which I may never be able to afford, but that's all right. I've been looking at electric cars too. And, I've got issues with that with a small off-grid system. So I'm happy with my system, but compared to you guys, you're used to using a lot of electricity.
Yep.
I average about between 3 and 4 kilowatts a day over the year compared to 300-400 kilowatts that you guys use.
I'm gonna try to use as little as possible when it's cold, because it's hard to make it in the winter. Hard to make electricity in the winter.
Yes, it is. So the only time I can do resistant electricity is when there's full sun on my panels. And even then, it's only a maximum of about 900 watts.
And then we did get a question, people are hopping off. We did get a question about who to go to for the energy audits, whether the, utilities provide that service. I don't think the utilities do energy audits. It's more of a clean energy resource teams. So I know that, CEE, the Center for Energy and the Environment in the Twin Cities, does energy audits, but the energy audits is done by a variety of organizations in greater or outstate Minnesota. I can,
But certain, if you went to the CERT's website, I think they would probably have the information.
yeah, I'll send around an email once I have a satisfactory answer to that question.
Interrupt. Let's see here. This is about Lake Country Power. About 10 years ago, they had a program sponsoring big rebates on in-ground style heat pumps. The program for some consumers did not work out real well because I'm trying to remember, Lake Country Power charged more per hour to run heat pumps
Oh,
than regular things.
oh,
Also, Lake Country Power required that you have all sorts of, you couldn't just heat your house with heat pumps. To qualify for the better heat pumps, you had to have this kind of system and that kind of system to qualify for dual fuel or alternate heat. I don't think that that's true anymore, but if you are investing in one of these, whatever your power company is, do your homework.
Yeah.
As a good consumer, to make sure that if you buy this, they're somewhere in the background, they're not requiring you to, oh, by the way, you need to have this kind of backup system, which costs,
yeah,
that kind of backup system. We have an all-electric house 5 miles outside of Ely, and we do not have a heat pump. I think they're lovely, but we don't happen to have one. But we had energy consultants from Lake Country Power make recommendations of what we should have at what power here and there, so that we qualified for some of their lovely programs. So as a consumer, do your homework, because it's not just about sticking a mini split on the side of your house.
Yeah.
And make it work, because it seems like a terrific program, but do your consumer rates research. Thank you.
absolutely. I'm glad you said that.
Does
Yeah.
everybody do in town? That's another question. I may talk about
I mean,
rural.
so one thing I would say is if you walk around Ely, there are mini splits on a ton of houses in here. So I believe that the municipal utility of Ely has some sort of incentive encouraging it. This is
Okay.
again why I wanted to get an actual installer to come and just be like, yeah, that's why there are so many of them inside the city limits of Ely. But just walking around, you can just, I see more mini splits in Ely than I saw in St. Paul. And Ely isn't inside the city limits. We're not all millionaires, right? Like there's an incentive program and there's it's a cost savings overall for those people. And that's why they're doing it, because it's a smart thing to do.